Hi, I'm Donnie Autry with Super Inspector. We're here today to do a phase 1 inspection. During a phase 1 inspection, we're going to be inspecting the forms that they put in. We're going to be inspecting the cable, the roughed in plumbing, the vapor barrier needs to be inspected as well. So we're going to take a look at all these things before they pour the concrete when it's too late to repair them. So follow me, let's do a phase 1 inspection. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is take my iPad here. I've got a program called Magic Plan. We're going to get a footprint of the foundation form boards, and then we'll use our zip level to measure the foundation form boards to make sure they're level. If they're not, we'll flag that in the report as a deficiency. Okay, so now that we've got the footprint, we're going to use a zip level here. We're going to zero out on this corner, go all the way around taking measurements every 10 foot or so, make sure these form boards are level. It's not unusual to come out here and measure form boards and find them to be 2 inches out of level. So we want to correct that while we have the chance. So Kelsey's going to zero out our zip level here, and we're going to take measurements. All right, when you're inspecting the form boards and you're checking the level on them, you also want to look at them to make sure that you don't have a form board here that's canted out or in, because that'll give you a bad edge on the concrete. So you need to make sure that these form boards are nice and straight in a vertical position, so you don't have any of them canted to one side or the other. Okay, so now we've measured the form boards. We're within about 4/10 of an inch all the way around, so that's pretty good. Now whenever they do this dirt work, a lot of this will be some virgin soil where they've dug the trenches. Sometimes they'll bring in this, what they call pack fill right here, so they can fill in the low spots, and then they pack this down real good. So while we're walking out here on these, we have to be careful not to get too close to the edge to cause that soil to fall down. But while we're walking around out here, we want to also pay attention, do we have any soft spots in the soil when we're walking around on these, in this form here. So we're going to take a look at that now. When you're looking at the dirt work and all the fill, any areas you have here where you have a hole going under the form boards, you need to point that out. That needs to be backfilled so that you don't have a big gap right there. Okay, we've walked around and everything feels to be packed pretty good. Didn't see any problems there. Another thing that we want to look at is these chairs. Like this one right here is falling over. So anything we see like that, we want to point out. The chairs are to hold this cable up so the concrete can get all the way around it. So anywhere that we see that needs another chair added to it, we're going to mark those locations. Just bear in mind that a lot of this stuff, if you got chairs that are leaning over or falling off to the side, that they're going to repair that as they pour the concrete. The concrete people, while they're out here making sure they get all the air pockets out, they'll make sure that these cables are setting right. So we don't want to worry too much about that. Don't want to make a big deal out of it. We do want to point them out so the client knows those need to be fixed before the concrete's poured. Now we also want to look at these cables where they cross over this plumbing. If we've got any of these cables here, come over this side. This cable here comes out this way and goes between these two pipes and then goes back that way. So we want to make sure that we should mark this as there needs to be a chair here that holds this cable away from this pipe. So when they stretch it, it's not too close and causes damage to this drain pipe vent. So we're going to mark this area location right here as needing a chair to hold that cable away from that pipe. Okay, another thing we want to look at on these cables is to make sure that the plastic coating on them, that there's no gaps in that. Concrete does have corrosive qualities to it, so these cables can't be exposed anywhere, so we're going to check all those as well. Now on the ends here, what they'll do is they'll take some of this coating and they'll split it and cover up any exposed cable. Now sometimes they'll come in and try to use duct tape and stuff like that to cover it up, and that's not acceptable. So we're going to check every one of these cables and make sure there's no exposed cable, that it's all covered up real good in this plastic coating. Now this plastic coating, these cables are also greased in here, so when they go to stretch the cables after the concrete sets, it slides back and forth within this coating. Okay, so we're inspecting these cables. Like I said here, they put some duct tape on it. Now they've got some of this coating on it. It's pulled back here. So this one right here needs to be repaired. There's also duct tape on these all the way across here. So we need to call those out as being improperly repaired and make sure that they put the plastic sheathing over them before they pour the concrete. Okay, right down here we've got a cable that's not been attached to the form board yet. So that needs to be attached to the form board. We'll get a picture of that, put it in the report. Now where these cables attach to the form boards, they need to be up against the form boards tight. You don't want them hanging down at an angle. So that's another thing that we're going to look at, is make sure that they're all good and tight up against the form boards and not sagging, because that'll put stress on the cable when they go to stretch it. So let's look at all those. Another thing that we're going to check on the cables is down here in the trenches. You don't want the cables laying on the ground here. So you can see they've got rebar stakes holding the cables up. Also, wherever the cables cross one another, they're tied together so that they don't move. So we're going to inspect all these trenches and make sure that we don't have any cables that are sagging onto the ground where concrete can't get under them. So I'm going to look at that now. All right, when you're inspecting these first phase inspections, you also need to look here in the corner. Make sure that they have rebar reinforcing in the corner. If you look down here, below us right here, we've got reinforcing rebar right here as well. So we need to make sure that all the corners are reinforced with rebar anywhere that there's a turn. You also want to look at all the rebar in here, make sure that you don't have anything like this. Right here, this rebar should have been under that cable. When they put that cable in there, it's pushed it up here where it's going to be right at the top of the concrete. This is the garage entryway. So this rebar right here needs to be moved down so it's not right at the top of the concrete. All right, another thing that we're seeing more and more on these Texas houses is these hurricane straps. These will be at the corners, a lot of times around the garage door opening. This extends pretty far down into the concrete. So this strap will be embedded in the concrete when it sets. These are really used a lot in hurricane zones like in Florida and stuff, but in Texas we've got a lot of high straight line winds, we get a lot of tornadoes and stuff. So this just adds stability to the structure and anchors it to the ground better. So this is something we're seeing more and more in new construction. All right, one of the things that we're looking for when we're inspecting this is that there's no trash in the trenches. So down here we've got some plastic, there's some styrofoam over here that needs to be cleaned out. Also, we can see down here, there's about 4 or 5 inches of water in the bottom of this from recent rains. Up there on the front, there's a lot more water. If they were going to pour the concrete on this tomorrow, I would recommend that they pump that water out. We also want to look for any loose fill. Anything around this dirt work that is falling down into the trench needs to be cleared out too. You don't want a low spot there where your beams are. So now we're going to check all these trenches and make sure that they're appropriate. Okay, we're also going to take a look at the vapor barrier. Now this plastic here is supposed to be a 4 mil plastic, so we're going to look at it, make sure it looks like it's thick enough. We're also going to make sure it's overlapped. Wherever they have a one piece overlap another, they need to have a good overlap so that no air can get between them. Also, anywhere we have like a cut here where they got this plumbing, that area needs to be pulled together, taped together so that you don't have any gaps there. Also, anywhere like over here where this pipe comes through, you got a big hole right there, that needs to be covered up as well. So we're going to take a look at all this vapor barrier and make sure that we don't have any openings where moisture could leak through from the ground and through the cement. So we're going to look at that now. Okay, this particular construction site, they've left the plans behind. They've gotten a little wet, but they're still readable. So if you've got the plans available to you, it's a good idea to take a look at them. You can look at where the plumbing penetrations are supposed to be, and there's also distances marked on here, so you can measure all the plumbing where it penetrates through the concrete and make sure that they're in the right location. It's not uncommon for builders to have to chip out concrete and reroute a plumbing vent because they put it in the wrong spot. So this is the time to catch that so they don't have to do that later on down the line. So we're going to take a look at those. We're going to measure some plumbing pipes and locations. Okay, now according to the plans, this area over here is the kitchen. And we see right here, that's probably going to be where the island and the sink is. You're going to have to get electricity to that. So they've run a conduit here. It comes out here. They'll bring the electrical, the conductors in this way, go underneath the concrete and come up over there. So anytime you see this, look in the plans. If you've got an island in the plans for the kitchen, make sure that they've provided a way to get electrical to that island. Now, one of the things that's going to be under the house and buried in the concrete is your drainage system for the toilets and the tubs and the sinks. So not much of it's visible, but what is visible, like this right here, we want to look at this and make sure that it has a downward slope, that it's not sloping upwards as it comes off of this drain right. Okay, so over there at the back where that bathroom's going to be, we saw that drain there. It was up towards the top of the foundation where the pour is going to be. We found that drain right here. It's down in the bottom of this. So we know that the drain's got a good downward slope, and it goes over this way, and your drain cleanouts are right there at the front of the house. So we just want to verify that the main drains have a good slope to them, that they're sloping towards the drain cleanouts. Also want to verify the installation of the drain cleanouts and make sure that there's no dirt or debris down in those. Next thing we're going to look at is the supply piping, where it comes into the house. We're going to take a look at that as well. Okay, so there's where your water meter is going to be. You see that loop there? That's your main supply pipe. We can follow it up here towards the house. Okay, so right here's where that main water supply line comes up. Now they'll tap off these and go through the walls with the supply piping for the bathrooms and the kitchen and all that stuff. We just want to make sure that the main line comes up somewhere in the foundation so that they can get to it and put in the roughed-in plumbing when they go to do the framing in the second phase.